What's up, coding rabbits, and welcome back to another episode of Live Coding with Rabbitwerks JavaScript. Thank you so much for joining me Saturday evening or morning or Sunday morning or however that works. I don't know, whatever time of day it is. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Right, this whatever you want to call it, episode is episode 7 of the FullStack Auth from scratch. Okay, so essentially what we're doing in this episode is we have our register component built out essentially, right? So basically what we're doing here is, if this is your first time tuning into the stream, we're building a simple full stack sign up and login type of feature that you would see in a typical application. That we are basically using Joy to validate user inputs, and then hashing passwords using bcrypt, and using JSON Web Tokens to authenticate and whatnot. And so what I was actually hearing at the Vue MN meetup, Minnesota Vue meetup, was that JSON Web Tokens should be stored in like a cookie versus, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought, in a cookie versus like just in local storage, because a cookie gets sent on all requests. And I think CJ from Coding Garden was actually talking about this as well. So I think I'm going to look into that. I'm not very familiar with cookies, to be perfectly honest. So what we could do is come back to the JSON Web Token storing in local storage and refactor that to use cookies instead. It can't be that difficult. So, okay, so basically this is where we're at. We have everything. It's actually hitting the back end with our user credentials, and we're able to register a new user. And so what we want to do now is actually be able to log in with that registered user. So we have to build out our login feature. So a lot of this is going to be pretty similar. And as far as the whole layout of the form, except we're just going to have a username and a password field that we're sending things off in. But before we do that, if we take a look at our register.vue, so our register view or whatever, you can see that we're using the same kind of sets of markup over and over again for these different inputs. And so the better way to go about this is we could probably go and componentize these inputs, so to speak, make it into a reusable component, so we can just import one component and have it rendered in multiple areas instead of having the actual hard-coded markup for each input field. So that's where using a framework like Vue really helps with like reusability and component trees and stuff like that. So let's go about doing that. Let's do that first, and then we'll just throw together our login page, because we'll have everything already pretty much done. So what we want to do first in order to do this is I'm going to take so this entire section right here, we're going to take this and bring it in and create turn it into its own component. So inside of the components folder, I'm going to create a new folder, and we're going to call it shared. And then inside of here, we can create a new file, and we'll call it input base.vue. Okay, so let's give ourselves a template, and let's actually just instead of this empty div tag right here, we're going to replace that with the markup we just copied from our form input. And I'm going to fix the wrong button. There we go. Am I missing? I think I'm missing a div tag. Let me check. Oh, I see, because we don't need this upper div tag is for the actual form group itself, so we can actually leave that in there. But we want, so we're going to take it out here though, so because it's not needed to wrap this individual input, we just need this markup right here. Okay, So there's a couple things that we want to do inside of the Vue instance for this component. So first let's Oh, I gotta put it inside of a script tag, my bad. Script, export default. And we're gonna put our style tag in here as well, because we're going to have bring in our styles for the input inside of this component. Okay, so what we want to do first is we're going to have a couple things that are going to be changed out for props. And specifically, it's going to be the label title right there. We'll have an ID that's going to be used as well. Yeah, let's see. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to rename this and put a underscore there in between it, just for kind of consistency here. I don't know. Okay, so inside of here we're gonna have a couple of different things. First, we need to bring in our props, and the one thing we're going to use for sure is going to be we're gonna need the type of the type of the input that is going to be. We're gonna need the label for the label text, essentially for the label. In doing that, we're also going to need to pass the ID in as well, right there. And the class will stay hard coded because I want that in both elements here, or in all three elements, because they're CSS classes. So, all right. So let's see here. Okay. So let's first start with the type. All right. So inside of our props object, we'll do type and open that up, and we're also going to have type of that, and it's going to be a string. So the prop type is the type of the string. Sorry if that's confusing. And it will be required true, just like that. All right, next prop we're going to want is the ID. So this is going to be what we're, for our CSS selector ID, and then the label for attribute. ID is an object, and that has a type property inside of it, and that is also going to be a string, and then we want to make sure that it is also required. Set required to true. All right, cool. Next one we want is the text. Or actually, instead of text, we're going to be a little bit more specific. We'll call it label. And that is going to be a type of string as well. If I can type. Jeez Louise, okay. And this is also going to be required. So all of these are going to be a string and basically going to be required. If I can type, jeez. All right, cool. Next, we just want, oh, actually, you know what? I'm looking at my reference notes. What we also want to do inside of this input is we're going to add the auto-completed attribute. Action, apparently, auto-complete. And then, okay. So we're actually going to bind to an input as well, or that's being passed into prop. So this, we want it to be, where is it? We're gonna have autocomplete, the name of the prop, autocomplete. All right, so this is going to have a type, and this is where, oh, sorry about that. Okay, so in this type, we're gonna pass in an array, and it's going to have string and Boolean. So we want to be able to pass in a string or a Boolean. Okay. And required. Oh wait, actually, instead of required on this one, we just want the default attribute to be true. God, I cannot type tonight. I do apologize. All right, let's see, where are we at? Type, ID, label, and autocomplete. Okay, so let's switch up this the attributes now in our component, and so let's just go top down. So we'll start with first name here. We want this to be the ID, and we need to, jeez, my keyboard's a little off center. All right, 4 is going to be bound to ID right here. So that's what we want set for that. We're going to interpolate the label prop right here using double curly braces. vModel, we're not going to be doing quite the same thing in order to make that work, but we'll come back to that. But for now, we'll switch out the text. Or actually, okay, yeah, text is going to be that. Text, oh, I'm sorry, type is bound to the prop type because we're passing that in for the type of the input. ID is also going to be bound to ID. And then the last thing we want to do is bind autocomplete to autocomplete, just like that. All right, am I missing anything? Nope. Okay, so coming back to the vModel, since this is a component and we're going to be essentially updating, well, we need to pass the value of this component to the parent component, and the way we go about doing that is we can use custom event to do that. Which we will go through, and we can use a custom event in conjunction with vModel in order to kind of send it up as sort of like an event to the parent, where you would pass props down to a child component from a parent component. This kind of works as the way up. We'll use it this way, going about a custom event for like a form input like this, because we don't necessarily want to have to worry about storing that information inside of like Vuex if we don't have to, because it's just essentially temporary data that's being sent to the parent component to be handled. So, handled for real in the app at that point. So we just need to be able to get the data up to the parent, and the way we're going to do that is, like I said, custom event. So let's go about starting that. Props. Okay, cool. Okay, so we can close that. Okay, so we need to bring in our data object, which, remember, data is a function that returns a new object, just like that. And we're just going to have one data property in here. It's just going to have value, and it'll be equal to an empty string. All right. So let's come up here to the vModel directive, and we can switch out new user.firstname to just be value, just like that. Cool. So now that that's vModeling this value property right here, we want to be able to do something whenever this essentially value gets changed. So what we want to do is we're going to fire off a method. Okay, so check this out. Here, best to just explain it in this way. So we're going to set up a new event listener on this input, and we're going to set it to listen for an input, right? And when the input event gets listened to, we're going to fire off a method called update value, right? So update value is going to take the value from our data object here, and using a custom event. So if we open up our methods object, and inside of here we're going to write this dot $emit, and this is, actually we got to put this inside of the name of the method. So we're going to we called it update value, just like that, and it's a function, and we can just pass in or open that up like that. And so inside of here we'll say this dot $emit, because emit is the global, or like the custom event prototype on the Vue object, or Vue instance, so to speak. All right, so the custom event gets two arguments passed into it. The first one is a string, and that's the name of the custom event that we want to listen for, or emit, I'm sorry. So update value, we'll just do the same thing to keep it consistent. And then the second object, or the second argument that we pass in, is the data that we want to pass in. So it only accepts two arguments. So if we have multiple properties and stuff, we have to send it through via like an array or an object, a singular data structure, as the secondary argument. Excuse me. All right, so this dot value is what we want to pass in with this custom event. All right, cool. So, all right. that should be all we need on this plane of existence. Let's head back up to the register.vue and bring this component in, and we'll see how we can go about using the custom event in order to get the data inside of this component. Okay, so let's all the way down here, because this is a huge component. I mean, already just the markup alone is 159 lines. So we gotta break this down a little bit. And we're even gonna extract this view header out into a reusable component too, just to kind of clean up our code and make it a little bit more neat, composable, readable, all that good stuff. Okay, so let's come down here and we want to import our components. So we'll do it above joy. So import, import input base from, and we need to go up because we're in the views file directory right now. We need to go over to components, down to shared, and we want to target input base.view. Right, look at this thing just flying. Okay, so now that we have it imported, we can bring it into we can register it on our Vue instance to be used as a component. So we can do that by right above our data object here, we'll say open up the components object, just as such. And we'll say input base. And that is input base. Just like that. So we now have it registered on this Vue instance. We can use it inside of our markup or inside of our template. So here is where the original markup was, and we're going to take this whole group right here and we're just going to delete it. And what we want to do instead of that, give ourselves some room for code, is we will say input base, bring that in, and then self-closing tag. We're going to open that up actually, and inside of here we're going to pass in the props that we need, right? So excuse me. Let's first start by we'll do the type first. Type equals, so this one is a type equals text, right? Oops. We don't need to bind it to that because text isn't a variable. We just want to pass in this hard-coded value right here, so we can send that hard-coded value to it. Okay, next we want is the ID, and we'll say first name, just like that. Next we want is the label, so we're gonna say for this one we're gonna say first name in a human readable format, so to speak. And then last but not least we want to pass in the autocomplete, and this is just going to be set to true, just like that. So that's what I'm saying. Like, okay, so the reason why we have this we're passing in an array here right? The reason why we're passing in an array here is because we can either pass a string or a boolean. The only reason only way we'd be able to pass a boolean into this autocomplete right here like this is if it was being bound to something like that. So we want to just be able to pass true as the actual value to be loaded into that attributes value slot, so to speak. I hope that makes sense. So we want to be able to make sure we can accept both booleans and strings for the types there. Otherwise, if we passed in a boolean and it only accepted strings, it would throw an error and all that good stuff. So that's what we're doing on that point. Okay, so the last thing we want to do to get this bad boy up and running, and actually look at, is this in there properly and all that good stuff? Let's take a look at the Vue Dev Tools. I just want to check. I wasn't really paying attention. I was talking. Vue app register. Look at it's in there. Sweet. What I want to do is pass in, what I want to try and get is I'm gonna submit a feature request essentially for for Vue that we can pass in a prop to be used as essentially like a special prop to be used as like a name to give the component a custom name, because you'll kind of see what I'm running into and why I'm saying that once we get multiple of these in here. But honestly, just looking at it through the actual code itself and looking at the markup, you can tell what kind of text, what kind of input it is and all that stuff, and what it's for and all that stuff. But it would be nice to kind of like be able to append to this text here, or like modify it in some way just to kind of give it a little bit of uniqueness. So if you're using the same component multiple times like this, you can tell what you're doing with each of them, kind of thing, just by looking at the name. So, but that's just kind of like my personal preference, I guess you could say. Or not personal preference, that's just like a feature request that I think that would be helpful in situations like this, which you'll see more of once we get more of these switched out. So let's get this component finished, and then we can start swapping all of these input groups out. So the last thing we want to do is we're going to handle that input event, right? So remember, we have this new user object that we are targeting or filling up essentially with all these inputs. And what we want to do is, if you're just joining, we have a custom event inside of this child component, the input base, and it's essentially emitting a custom event that contains the value of the input that we're modeling via vModel. So what we want to do is we want to be able to listen for that custom event, and by doing that, or listening to custom events on this component is just like listening to a normal event. So we can use the von directive, or the @ shorthand, and then just type in the name of the custom event that we want to listen for. So update value, just like that, right? And what this is going to do at this point is we're gonna essentially, we can run an arrow function in here. We're going to get the value of this custom event implicitly passed in to this listener to be used in conjunction with the event object. It's kind of confusing, but just bear with me. So check this out. We'll have the value in here, and then what we're going to do, so this is the value that we're getting passed up from the input base component. And so what we want to do with this value when this function runs is we're going to actually just write an arrow function. We just want to target new user, if I can type, dot first name, since that's the what this input is targeting, essentially. First name equals value, just like that. So with all that said and done, now what we should be able to have is essentially like a vModel. Lack of React knowledge catching up with me. Oh, I see. It's all good. These input things is like pretty Reacty right here with these inline. This is kind of like the basis of why custom events, or like why the composition API has come to fruition, because of like the way of writing like these functions and composing your components and stuff like that. And I don't know. Anyways, I can see why they want to switch over to stuff like, arrow functions and hooks and whatnot, because it makes it a lot more clean rather than having an actual method on our component that does that, when we can just handle it inline like this. Excuse me. So let's make sure this works. So let's give ourselves a refresh here, and if it works, we should see the register where is that first name attribute down here. If you can see it, I'll zoom in just a little bit bigger. We should see this first name attribute update when we type in. So let's do test, and look at that, it works. Sweet. So that's kind of the point of that. So you can see that we're getting that, we're handling the the vModel inside of this input component, and then we're passing it up every time that input event happens inside the child component. Up to the parent component goes the value, and then we use that value inside of the data, or inside of the parent component. So it's kind of a tricky concept to get wrap your head around, unless you actually do it. So just it's but hopefully this will help clarify things a little bit. So now that we have that done, we can actually just go like this. We can start just replacing all of this stuff really easily. So let's just take this input group here, copy that out, and we can just update our props and all that stuff to equal what we need them to equal, because all of this will stay the same. We just need to essentially change that to this as a last name. Make sure that's in camel case. Last name, autocomplete true. Okay, cool. Let's, oh, we forgot. Oh, no, there it registered. Let's just make sure that works as well. So you can see right now we have two input bases. We can't really tell them apart, but you know, that's one of the drawbacks of reusability, I guess. But let's see here. So if we type in to the last name, we got that working. Excellent. Cool. So let's just go through and whip these out really quick. So this one's for username. Copy that into and as a component now. Username. Text, that's fine. We want it to be username. All one, lowercase for the username. Username. Okay, so this one's gonna actually stay the same because as you remember, this one's our drop down. So we don't need to necessarily redo this one because we're only gonna be using it in one spot in our application as of right now. So for now, we're gonna keep this just hard coded as it is. I mean, we can actually bring it into its own component, but it basically just we're gonna repeat the process that we did with the text inputs, but obviously with just a little bit different code going on to handle the select group and all that stuff. But we're not going to worry about that right now. We're just going to leave that how it is. So down in the inputs, now we can go to that one. All right, let's swap this one out. Give ourselves some breathing room here. Cool. So this one is username.email. Email. Excellent. And then we want to actually, instead of text, because we want this to be an email input, we need to change the type to email. Don't forget about that now. That's important for these ones. So now we can tell kind of which emails it kind of tells us what input type this is, even though it's an input base. You know, we can change it based on what type we pass into this prop right here. All right, let's copy that in. And this one is fairly similar. We just need to add confirm here and then email confirm on these. Email confirm. Righteous. Excuse me. And then we last but not least, we just need to swap out our password inputs. So we could just copy that into there, just like so. Give ourselves some breathing room. And then cool. So the next thing we want to change for this one is, remember, this is our input password. So let's change type over to password. And change this to password. I think this is actually just pass, if I remember correctly. Yeah, pass. Okay. Pass, and then yeah, ID is pass, and then label is going to be password. Excuse me. How's it looking? So far, so good. Cool. All right, and let's see here. We can't forget to bring our styles into there. Those are all living in the main.css right now. So before we're done here, we got to bring our styles into this component just to tidy everything up. Okay, so last but not least, we want to, oh, look at this one has a disabled attribute onto it. I forgot about that, but we could add in that and just do, it doesn't have to be required. So okay. let's do that really quick. So let's head over to the input base, and we're going to add one more prop to pass in, and we'll do it above the autocomplete. We'll just say disabled object. And what we want to, I think what this is going to do, since we're going to have this evaluation right here, essentially evaluate to a true or false value, is we're just going to have it accept only a type of Boolean as a valid type. I guess we could just cover our bases and just do a string and a Boolean in case like they want. Actually, no, we're just going to keep it as a Boolean. That's what we're going to do. And then we don't need to have the required attribute, but we will say, or a default, because we don't want it. Well, actually, we're going to have a default to false just in case, because we don't, or default to false, because reason being is that in case this doesn't get filled or, you know, a value passed to it, we just want to make sure that it defaults to false. So it's not disabled essentially. And we can just put that right here above the autocomplete. We'll just do disabled, and we'll be bound to disabled, just like that. I'm going to move this HTML or this class attribute just down here, so we have all of our view stuff right on top, and then we have the regular markup stuff down here. Cool. Where are we at? So we got that done. Okay, so now we can swap this thing out. So let's just copy this for good measure, and I'll just take all of this, paste that in there, give ourselves a little bit of breathing room. Cool. And then update our values here. So password confirm. This one is going to say confirm password. New user.pass confirm on the event handler here, and then let's also add in our disabled attribute. So disabled was new user dot pass is less than 5, right? Is that what we had before? Let's see. Can't remember. Shoot. What do I have it as? Oh, I don't have that written on this one. Oh, goodness. So if disabled is if new user dot pass is less than 5, it should be true. Disabled. Let me just check and see that I have everything. Let's check the actual, oops, view app. See, look at all these input bases. I don't know which one's which. Disabled is true. Oh, wait a second. Okay, so it is disabled, but oh, okay. Let's see if it works. Oh, it's, wait a second. Dot pass. Why is that not working properly? Oh, because it's, oh, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting dot length. Jeez. Okay. Staring me right in the face. Jeez. All right, let's see. All right, it works. And we want it six letters, so we want it less than 7. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, no, we want it less than 6. Sorry. Okay, so disabled is bound to an expression that says new user dot pass pass.length is less than 6. Evaluate that and pass the evaluation into the input to be used in the place of the prop inside of the attribute, inside of the component, and all that good stuff. Excellent. All right. So now we have all that good stuff. Let us all that good stuff. Let's see where we at. Minimize that, minimize that, minimize that, minimize that. All right, so you know we cut down about, what was it, 40 lines of code, so that's pretty good, you know, just for refactoring out into a reusable component. Okay, so let's build out this oh, before we do that, I almost forgot, I gotta bring the styles in. I mean, we could keep them in here, but I want to keep this kind of clean unless it absolutely needs to be in here. And since these guys, the label, the input text, and then the input text disabled, these can all come and live in this component now that we have it made. So I'll just drop them in there as such, and cool. That's all she wrote. Styles still apply. I just want to give it a refresh just to make sure. Yeah, okay. Neat. Okay, excellent. All right, so come back to the register. What I want to do actually is I'm just essentially going to take all of this markup inside of the template, and I want to bring it into our login.vue. And the reason why I want to do that is because essentially most of the shell of the register view is going to be the same as the login view. So we're going to just start with that, and we can just clean up most of the stuff to begin with. So we're only going to have 2 input groups. It's going to be a username and a password, essentially. Right? So everything underneath these first 2 groups here, or this first group here, we're going to delete. We won't need any of this stuff down here. I mean, we could sit there and here. Yeah. So actually, I'm gonna go about it like this. We'll delete them by base. So we can delete first name and last name can go. All right, so we can delete this whole div for the name input group. We can delete all that. We can delete the div with that's the input group div that is housing the select input. We can delete both of the email inputs, so that whole group, and then we're also going to essentially what we want to do is just take this input and copy it into this. Oh, I'm missing a div there, a closing div tag. And it's telling me right there. Okay, so we're gonna underneath here, I'm just gonna copy that in. So we'll have the username and then the password, and then we'll just make sure we close our div here. All right, cool. So let's go to the login page and see what we have. Oh, we don't have those components loaded in yet, or that component brought into this. So let's do that. Oh, I'm gonna actually delete this. So we're deleting the actual password group that we just copied that other component from, right? All right. And this isn't the register page anymore. This is going to be the login page. So we'll do login. I'm just looking at my classes now. So instead of register outer, register inner, I think I'll refactor those to say view outer, view inner, because we can just maybe just combine this view and view register outer into one class. Kind of clean up our classes and not so overly verbose. Okay, so let's before we do that, let's get this component brought in. So first we need to import it. So import input inout input base from. Again, we need to go up to the source, over to the components, down to the shared, and then we have access to the input base. All right, cool. So the last thing we got to do is register it. So let's open up our components object inside of our view instance, and then we can just register it as input-base as we had it before. Make sure it is in single quotes, otherwise it'll yell at you. And set it to input base just like that. Wonderful. Boom, and then there they are. Cool. So we have register, we have login, and obviously it looks a little bit different right now because we don't have the same styling. We're gonna actually, let's fix that right now. So I think, what is it? This is a register.view. Register inner. I'm just thinking in terms of like, okay, so if we set the view, all views to be that, we don't necessarily want it to be like that. So we'll probably we'll probably keep it the same and just chain these different login header, login, or login outer, login inner. So we'll chain these styles together in our CSS. And we can bring that into our main. You know what? I'm just going to copy this into its own component. We'll just put it in here. That's easier at this point. And we can go through and like refactor how we want to like organize things if we want to switch it up after the fact. But I think if we just have that in here, since it's really the only style that we're going to need, login inner. And actually, I don't even think this login outer doesn't even have any styles associated with it or with the register outer. So we can actually, we could get rid of that if we want. So essentially that's just a label telling us what it is. Whatever, I'm just gonna leave it in, fine. Okay, so delete too many things and then I won't know what's what. Okay, last thing we're going to do really quick is take this view header class and we're going to put it, whoops. So I'm going to take this view header class down here inside of our register.view and just bring it into our main CSS file because we have this being used in multiple areas now and we don't need to host the CSS inside of there. All right, where are we at? So we have login and we have register. So register inner, login, refresh. There we go. So now we have some consistency across our styling. Obviously, it's a little bit shorter because there's a scroll bar here that gets generated that's squishing things slightly, but that's to be expected. All right. All right, so we can change this on our call to action button. We can just say login instead of register. And also we're going to need to change this attempt registration. We'll have to say attempt login right there. We don't have that method written yet, so we'll have to go into our view instance in just a minute here, but just double checking things. Cool, looks like we are good to go on that, on the markup. So let's go into our view our view instance here and let's start writing out some logic for this. So there's a couple things that we need. We need our data object, and that's going to have our returned object. Inside of here, it will have the what did we call it? Something concise. Okay, so we didn't even have it inside of an object. We just We'll do user. Let's just do user. Creds. User creds. No, I'm going to do what I originally wanted to do. Login creds. All right, login credentials. Don't hate on me right now. It's Saturday night. Thanks again for tuning in with me Saturday night or wherever, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Thanks for tuning in again. I do appreciate it. It means a lot. Make sure to give the video a like and all that good stuff. Share it with your coding buddies and all that good stuff. They are into Vue and Node stuff. All right, so we have two data fields that we need to add in here, two properties, and it'll be a username and a password. All right. Cool. All right, so now that we have those, we need to actually update our event listeners to handle the different data, or the different name, the new data stuff that we're sending in from value, or from the update value method. So it's not new user anymore. We're updating the login credentials. So login creds dot username, just like that, and that's for the username, obviously. And then last, or the second one we want to do is login creds dot password. Cool. Let's just confirm that those are working really quick. So if we come down to this anonymous component, I don't know why it says that half the time, and the other time it actually has the name proper in there. All right, so we have that working, and we also have that working. Cool, excellent. All right, so let's see here. So we have that. We're entering those passwords in. We also want to make sure that we're validating these. So we're also going to bring Joy. So the same registration or validation schema that we used on the register, we're going to bring the same thing in, but we're only going to be using the username and the password. So let's bring that in. So we can just copy all of this, since we're going to be reusing this register schema, essentially the same properties on it verbatim. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, so underneath this, where we're importing our child component, the input base, we can bring in Joy from @happyjoy, the package that we installed on the front end. And we don't need all of this stuff, so we're just going to actually have, we can delete the email, we can delete the user class, and we can also delete the last name and first name. And also we're just going to rename this here to login schema instead of register schema. Cool. So now that we have that we have that running against, well, not running yet. Well, we can use that to validate our inputs and stuff like that from our user. Right. So let's next thing we want to do is get some method, or our method written to handle this login methods. Now live again. Woo! Good job, buddy. Okay. So we inside of our methods we'll have the attempt login. Oops. That we wrote right here when we hit this call to action button. Everything's breaking when I need it to work most. All right, function called attempt login. Open that up, and inside of here we are going to write an if statement. So first we want to make sure that both of the inputs are actually filled, just in case for whatever reason that the in browser like required attributes aren't catching it and it's trying to submit an empty field. So we'll just say this, if this dot login creds dot username and this dot login creds dot password. So if both of those fields, or both of these these data properties have values in them, then we can run something, and if not, we can console log. So say else, we'll just write our console log, our good old console log for now, and console.loaf. let's just say, please fill in all the fields. Cool. Righteous. Okay, sweet. Oh, we just need to make sure we have a space there for syntactic pleasure. Never done custom events in React, so wanted to make sure there was no funkiness. Pretty nice way of doing it. So there's like actual custom events and stuff in React. I can't remember off the top of my head at this point. It's been so long since I used it. Alright, so where are we at? Okay, so now that we have this conditional statement, we're checking to see that both of these username and password has a value inside of it. We're going to I guess we don't really need to validate it because it's just gonna look for I don't think we really do need to validate it for the login, do we? I mean, I guess we might as well. All right, we'll just do it. Screw. All right, so inside of here, we're going to say, how do we do it? I can't remember. Let's see. Oh yeah, we got to do validate. Oh, okay, so this is how we do it. Remember, I was getting stuck on it last time because they updated their syntax since when I built the prototype and I'm doing the actual live coding project. Oh yeah, that's right. You just pass a function in as a prop, and you can call that function inside of the component or the child component or whatever. That rings a bell. I do remember that. Okay. I'm getting tripped up. So we have login schema dot validate async. And then inside of here, we're going to pass in the login credentials. Oh, not this dot login schema, this dot login creds. All right. Yeah, because in this one, we just need to validate that everything is in there and that the emails and the passwords match, and then that's our validated new user, and then we pass that against our register schema. Okay, cool. So yeah, so this dot login creds is what we're going to validate, and cool. And so now that we have we're saying validate async, it returns a promise, which we learned last session. All right, so then we'll say result, and it should be, the result should be just like validated creds. Let's call it that. And I just want a console.log validated creds just for now. And then also we'll just add our catch on here just to make sure if we do have any errors, it gets handled by this catch statement. So we'll just console log the error if we do come across an error in this validation. That way it doesn't break our app. So let's give this a test really quick. Let's just make sure that we can pass this stuff in. Cool. So the fact that we got this object back means that it is it's validated, because this is getting console logged at line 75 here, and you can see it brought us right there. Cool. Neat. All right, console, we can have that. And so instead of just console logging it, this is where we're going to make our fetch request to the back end. Now we'll hook up to the API, and well, we don't actually have that really written yet. Let's see, what do we even have on the back end for the login? Because what we'll have to do is we're going to have to take the user credentials. We're going to have to check the database for that existing thing. We're going to have to verify the incoming, the credentials being used to log in against the credentials inside of the database. So we're going to have to hash the password and check that against the hash. And if everything is good and checked out, then we will return a JSON Web Token that's verified against the, sign a JSON Web Token, I believe, if I remember correctly, and we'll verify against what we have in the database. So we'll get there at some point, but first we just need to get it sent to the back end. So we'll handle that. We'll finish that up this evening, and then we'll move on. Next session to the login route on our backend API. So, or I guess it would be the auth API right now. All right. So what do we want to do in here? We have this arrow function, and okay, now we got to write fetch. All right, so it's running at localhost right now, and then what we'll do is when we get this deployed or whatever, we'll switch out localhost for the actual domain, URL that it's living at, and that is running at port 1337/auth/login is the route we want to hit with this. Okay, cool. So we'll pass in, after we have the URL here, we'll pass in our options object, and we want to set our method, which is going to be post, right? Let's see, I gotta check. Oh, it's in Vuex on this one. Yeah, post. Okay, and then let's pass in our headers object. So headers, and inside of this object, we want to have the content type application JSON, standard de facto for working with JSON responses and all that good stuff. I don't really think it matters if the if it's capitalized on any of the C or the T. But because I've seen it multiple ways. But I'll just do it like that for now. Okay, so content type is application/JSON. Welcome. And then the last thing we want to do is we're going to set our body of the request, and the body is going to be equal to, remember, we got a JSON.stringify, and we're going to send in our validated creds, just like that. Whoop, and not a semicolon at the end there. All right, cool. So let's see what we got here. Let's take a look at our backend now. All right, we got to finish up. We're running into the 1 hour mark, so let's see what we got here. So what we can do for right now is just okay. So this is our router. This is a get request to this auth/login. What we want to do is I'm going to keep that in there for now, just in case anybody navigates that web page, they get the welcome to the login route little string there. So I'm just going to duplicate that, and instead of it being a get request, we're going to set up router.post, and that's going to set post request route for this route that we're passing in here. So /login, and with that I can go ahead and go like this, and so we'll say res.json rec.body. So what that should do is just essentially we're going to send it right back to the front end. And okay, so once we have that being pushed back, we got to finish our fetch request here. So fetch is going to return a promise, so we just need to say .then, and so we'll have the result essentially again, and we will say console.log result. And last, we want to chain on the catch. So .catch, and then so this will just handle again if we have any errors in this whole process, sending it back to the back end, and then what if we get anything back or an error back from the fetch request, it'll be handled with this error catch right here, and we'll console log the error just like that. Cool. And that should be all that we need to get this up and running, fully functional, to be able to at least get the response back. Of course, we have to finish the login post request route on our back end, which we'll do in the next stream. But I think let's just make sure that this works properly. So let's go to register, and we can go in here and just we'll just give ourselves a nice little sure rabbit. Oh, I think I have a ton of rabbits. So we'll do rabbit 10. We can't forget that one. Rabbitwerks.js at Gmail. Shoot me an email. What's that? Rabbitwerks.js at gmail.com. And password is going to be ASD123. ASD password 123. Okay. Register. Oh, why? All fields are required. All fields are required. What's it not liking? 202. Alright. Let's see what's going on here. I wonder if I have a typo somewhere. Let's see. Is this all getting filled? Email confirm. Oh, we have an issue here. For whatever reason, there is 2 email confirms. So that's not gonna work very well for us. Oh, because it added in that property right here. That shouldn't have happened. I don't think that should have happened, but email confirm, just like that. All right, send it off now. Oh, we got to do everything over. Blah blah blah. RTRR. That's my name. Username will be rabbit10. Email. Copy. ASD123. ASD123. We hit the semicolon at the same time at mjail. Oh, I think I had a typo. Whatever. What's going on here? Register. Failed to fetch. Oh, my backend's not running. Oh goodness. All right. CD server. It would probably help if I had a friggin' backend spun up. Oh well, that happens. npm run dev. Get that running really quick. Should take not but a second, and there we go. Let's try it again. Boom, we got worked. Thought we got a response back and handled that, but maybe not. All right, so let's try. We're gonna log in with rabbit10 and password and password. So let's go to login. We'll do rabbit10. The password should be ASD123. And oh, status is true. What is the body? Oh, wait a second. What am I doing here? I'm missing something on the fetch request. Cores, that's all good. Redirected false, status is okay. So the request is good. I'm missing one thing on here for the fetch request. So we don't want a console.log result. What we want to do is we're going to run result.json on this. And then we're going to have another then tagged onto this. And then we can console log that, and that should be the response that we want, the JSON parsed from the body. Okay, so let's try it one more time. So rabbit10 and ASD123. Let's clear the console, shoot login, and boom, yes, worked. And that is coming from line 84 here. So cool, we did it. Woo, go team. We're one step closer to full stack authentication and authorization from scratch. Thank you so much, CJ, for giving me the opportunity to be able to recreate this project. Your backend will be running when the cold hits. Sure will be. Yeah, it's supposed to get real cold this next week. Well, it's supposed to start getting cold and stay cold, but that just means you get to stay inside more and code. Oh man, Lord knows I'm behind on so much stuff right now. Oh well. Oh well, that's the way it goes. Way she goes. Alright, so cool. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna push this code to I'm gonna push it to GitHub and you guys can take a look at it. So let's see, let's come over to here. I'm just gonna open a new terminal. CD client, and okay, so let's make a new branch. We'll do git checkout -b, and it is fsafs -c -03 _ login view API call. Cool. All right, git add all, git commit -m, and we're going to say add. Well, actually, we're not really adding it. Well, we did add because we add input. Come on. Base component and yeah. Refactored. Okay. Yep. Okay. So and then we updated, and so we'll update. We updated login view with markup and logic API call. Cool. Push that. Git push -u to set the upstream origin as the upstream, and we want to just push this branch. fsafs -3, and bada boom. Oh, hello Keanu. All right, let's see. All right, I'm gonna share that link in the chat, and I gotta push the back end stuff still, so we'll get that finished as well. Ooh, looks like GitHub a little bit of a UI update. Looks nice. I like it. All right, we are in that branch right here. And where is it? Cool. So yeah, go ahead and check out that. And also Joshua shared the React version in the chat as well if you want to type along or check that out as well. So let me finish really quick. I gotta push this server stuff. Okay, cd / server. All right, git add all, git push. Oh, git commit -m update login post route res.json response. Cool. All right, now git push. Oop. Excellent. Cool. All right, so all of that is up there. Everything should be running and working. If you find any errors, make sure to make a pull request. And yeah, cool. Anyways, that's going to do it for this evening. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Live Coding with rabbitwerks JavaScript. Thank you so much, CJ and Coding Garden with CJ, for again letting us recreate this project. Make sure to go and check his channel out. Again, the link for that project and channel is in the description below. Massive shouts to everybody that tuned in. Thanks so much for everybody that subscribes and likes and all that good stuff. What am I forgetting? Yeah, I don't know. Best way to get a hold of me is the rabbitwerks Discord. Link is in the description as well. And other than that, I think that's going to do it. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Have a good night. Stay awesome. Keep coding, all that good stuff. And much love. And we'll catch you on the flip side very soon. This has been Sean with rabbitwerks JavaScript, and we are signing out.